Hey, everybody. As recruiters, we all know that hiring can be one of the most challenging parts of running a business. Whether you're a startup looking to build a dream team or a well established company aiming to streamline your recruitment process, the right tools can make all the difference. Teamtailor is a powerful, all in one recruitment software your candidates and team will love. It's not just a piece of software, but a way of working. With Teamtailor, you get everything you need all in one place: powerful analytics, an AI assistant, customizable workflows, powerful integrations, and so much more. Plus, Teamtailor is easy to use and implement with their intuitive, user friendly interface. 94% of their users report better team collaboration, and 97% see an increase in qualified candidates. If you're focused on the candidate experience, CX is at the heart of the ATS. Just ask any of the 4 million candidates who connect with customers every month. Join the ranks of over 150,000 recruiters and more than 8,500 companies like Oatly, Porsche, and OneFlow who have transformed their recruitment with Teamtailor. Discover the new way to attract and hire top talent and see the results for yourself. Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning into the Rebel TA podcast. You're here with James Ellis, globally recognized employer brand leader. What's up, James?
It's the head. They've recognized the bald head.
Big noggin energy.
Oh, God, I'm stealing that. That is glorious. And because there's no hat that really fits me. You can see the headphones are kind of like holding on for dear life. It's a big old noggin. So yeah, I'll take that.
When you wear many hats, you wear none?
Oh, no, trust me. It's just, I can't wear any hats. I look like a cartoon character. It doesn't feel like a human being anymore. I just like, what is this hat? It doesn't work. And even my wife and kids are like, no, don't do that. No, it doesn't work.
Well, being a cartoon character, it's actually so closely related to brand. And you're the expert here.
Look at what you just did. That was slick.
No, it's the truth. Like when you see something over and over again, it increases your affinity towards it. If you're changing your profile picture or your thumbnail for speaking engagements, like everything you do, people are going to like lose sight of that memory of you. But if you're like just that little widget from the internet, it's like, oh yeah, that's James Ellis. I keep seeing that guy. So it's like, It's actually a really smart play. It's why the Nike check has been the Nike check.
It's always like that. That said, I think there are plenty of people out there who have a really old photo and then I meet them and I'm like, I don't. Right. Yeah. Okay. I see it now. And it feels like there's so much more mental math that has to go into that. But you're right that, there is a value in consistency on some level, but let's not over index on it.
True. I've had those too. And candidly, it's funny. My profile photo recently has been hoodie and a hat because I was going into interviews. Like I'm a recruiter. I do the work and candidates would be like, you don't look like your profile photo. And so I like started doing my profile photo of what I look like on interviews. And now we go to these events and I don't have my glasses on. I'll have my hair out. And people are like, you don't look like your photo. So it's like, man, I don't know who I'm supposed to please.
There's no winning.
Yeah. Anyway, where are you based? What are you working on?
I'm in Chicago. I've been in Chicago about almost 15 years now. So I guess I live here now. I'm so used to kind of bouncing that it's like, if I'm here for this long, I guess I'm in Chicago forever. So I'm good. Love it though. It's the only city I think I can reasonably live a decent existence without owning a car. So It's like, I guess I'm here now.
I am going to do a branding parlor trick.
Here we
featuring
go.
Chicago. Are you ready?
Do it.
You're going to know it. Scruff McGruff, Chicago, Illinois, 60682.
No,
I got to check it.
It's not coming to me.
Scruff McGruff. Did I say 606?
Doesn't matter. Scruff McGruff doesn't resonate. It doesn't catch me.
What is this? I don't know what it is. It's something from my childhood where I remembered it was like a jingle.
Okay.
Or a cartoon. But anyway, that's the power of brand. That was 30 something years ago. And I remember this jingle.
Yeah. The ads you saw in between cartoons when you were a kid, that's there forever. That's just lodged in. It's wedged in and there's no getting it out.
Dude, I'll add the link in the show notes. That's literally what it is. It's a cartoon ad between cartoons.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
But I think that's the fascinating piece about employer branding is it's really just marketing and what people remember. I like to think about brand as how a person or company makes us feel, and marketing are the activities that drive a funnel conversion.
That's a fair assessment. I mean, like everybody kind of slices it and dices it and draws lines in interesting ways, but that's pretty close. I kind of I go with what, I'm blanking on the name. No, don't worry. It's the B2B Institute, LinkedIn's B2B Institute. They go with this idea that in any given moment, roughly 5% of people who could ever buy from you is actually in market. And if they're in market, you market to them. You give them coupons and codes and whatever it takes to walk them across the finish line, because once they're in market, that's a whole game. That's a whole process. But that means 95% of the people you could be buying or selling to aren't interested because they're not in market yet. Those are your brand audiences. So you want to say, okay, what can I say to them so that when the moment comes, when they're suddenly in market, it's a real simple conversation for my marketing team. Effectively the same thing you're saying, but slightly different math, but slightly different, adjustments. But that's the thing. You ask 100 marketers what marketing is, and you're going to get 98 different answers. It's a pretty fair assessment.
Yep. So what are tactical channels, campaigns that can get candidates into market if it's like 3 things?
Well, yeah. So that's really where good sourcing recruiters kind of live, and they should be good. And that's kind of what they do. They're trying to figure out, if I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile, I'm seeing where you are and I see how long you've been there, and maybe I see what you're publishing, and maybe I look 2 or 3 jobs back and I'm like, this person used to publish a lot and now they're not. I wonder if they're hungry to publish again. I bet a message that says, we'd like to elevate you as a part of our brand, that might resonate. And that's kind of a psychological process that good sourcing recruiters do. It's also akin to employer brand, because what you're saying is, this is what we offer our people. Like that, in the final distillation of all this stuff, an EVP and employer brand is simply, this is what we offer. And the more that offering differentiates itself from your competition, the more powerful it is, because it's a virtual monopoly on that thing. So, for example, you're a law firm in Houston, and I picked that because my parents live there and I had to spend 2 years there and I'm never going back. But you're a law firm in Houston. It's a big city, right? There's a million of them. There's a million billboards for law firms, and you say, okay, we're the law firm where dogs are allowed. And you go, well, that's just goofy. That's just stupid. What's going on? Why does that matter? I said, well, hold on. Unpack it for a second. Tell me, when I say law practice, what do you think? Do you think friendly? No. Do you think engaged? No. Do you think, backstabbing, cutthroat sharks? Maybe. But here's this one practice that says, we like dogs. Now, what do you know about people who like dogs? They're warm. They're friendly. They're interesting. They're engaging, simply by saying, yeah, we like dogs and we like to let dogs walk around. Telling someone something different about what you offer without having to say, would you like to see the 100 item checklist and all the different ways in which we're different, which is a pain in the ass and no one actually wants to read that. If you simply say, we're the ones who like dogs, you set yourself up, and all the other companies are going to say, we don't like dogs. Like, good, we're not competing with you. If you want a warm, friendly, human pet interaction kind of law firm, this is the only place to work. Everybody else can go over there and fight amongst yourselves. That's really what branding is about. Here's what we offer. Here's how it's different. Being very strategic and judicious about what you talk about, so it elicits those emotions. It elicits those pictures. It kind of paints these sketches, these kind of rough drawings that people go, oh, I understand what that is. That's what good branding usually is.
Yes. I love how you talk about how it makes people feel, and that one element of differentiation.
Yeah.
You don't have to do like 10 things different or the best or the first. You're usually not. It's like, just do something memorable. And this actually goes back to kind of public speaking and media training. Like, give your audience one takeaway that they want to remember you for. It doesn't have anything to do with your slide deck. Like B. James, the guy with 12 hamsters.
Yeah.
And when you think about brands that are doing this, I've been working most recently with early stage startups in tech, which is one sliver of the S&P. Obviously, it makes up a large majority of the capital there in our economy, but there's like 10 other segments of the S&P that are not trying to hire like tech bros in SF for catered Chipotle and a couple basis points of equity.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is really fun because you can pick up on things in these other industries that are working really well. And I love the analog brand campaigns or sourcing candidates that don't have a digital profile. like anybody can scrape LinkedIn and GitHub.
Yeah.
But can
Yeah.
you mobilize a workforce to have strong post-hire outcomes of knowledge workers in a field where people aren't clicking around on memes all day?
I'm a big proponent of saying you don't need a tech stack to hire well, to do a good employer branding. You need sidewalk chalk, and you need to know where those people are going to be. And then you need a message that's so differentiating that before they step on it, they go, what is this? I haven't seen that before. That's employer branding. You're saying something different. You're showing how you're different. You're offering something they haven't seen. They're not in market, but that's okay, because one day they will be. And the second they are, they're going to go, remember that weird thing I saw on the sidewalk? Boom, there you are. You don't need a huge campaign. You simply have to stand out, and you have to find a way to stand. Now, when I say stand out, people think, do I have to buy the chicken outfit and stand outside with a big sign like I'm selling tax services?
Stand out.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you got to find one thing that makes you different, because if you try and over differentiate, so the pendulum swings the other way. Hey, we're different in what we offer and how we work and how we pay and how we calculate equity and how we calculate. And you're like, oh, that's too much. That's math. That's homework. Bye. I'm out. Focus on one or two things that are truly different about you, that are, I'm going to say the A word, authentic, and that you can build on, because honestly, how you pay is going to be pretty much how like everybody else pays. And your benefits are going to be pretty much everybody else's benefits. And look, there's not too many things that you can really over differentiate on. So focus on one or two things, and it helps you kind of establish this is what we're about. And then you surround that with the rest of the proof points of like, well, of course I expect a computer and a paycheck and a title and whatever it is. I've been at a company where they're like, they're so obsessed with being different in every conceivable way. It was just like, this is too hard. Why are you making this so hard? Just explain to me what you want. Explain to me the value to me and the value to you, and we'll figure this out. Why are you so desperate to reinvent everything? It's crazy.
You can't spell authentic without tick, and you heard it first. What ticks James Ellis off is over complicating simple stuff.
Yeah.
Keep it simple, Sourcer.
Yeah.
That's what I try to tell people.
That's fair.
What else ticks you off about the perception of the work that employer branders do, what they're capable of, KPIs and metrics, and the over quantification of impact?
The quantification, it's not an over quantification. I think it's an interesting idea where very often employer branders are asked, what's the ROI on that? And there's a question behind the question that we miss. We think, oh, okay, I have to go and get an MBA and go calculate an ROI, which means, okay, what is the total cost and what is total savings? You do the math, right? You're doing the stuff.
Yep.
The real question is,
can I guess it?
Go.
I think the real question is, the person who's asking that is usually a stakeholder authority. And their question is, do I need to continue paying this person?
Pretty close. I think the question really is, do you have any clue how a business works?
There we go.
Because recruiters, and I love recruiters, I get a bad rap for thinking recruiters are bad. I just hold them to a higher standard because I know they're amazing and they can do amazing things. They are power packed, the power part of the company. That's how they grow. But I hold their feet to the fire because they're how the company grows. Recruiters are so often divorced from the business. They don't know what things cost. They don't know what everybody makes. They don't know how things work. They just go, I want, because it's going to be helpful to me, and they ask for it. And it's tough. And when the exec or the leader is saying, what's the ROI on that? What they're really asking is, look, I have money to spend on a lot of different people. How do I know you are mature enough to understand that this is an expense? And if I put this money here, I can't put it there. Justify your existence a little bit and justify your knowledge of how businesses work. Yep. The recruiter who can speak in ROI, the recruiter who can speak in business terms, is the recruiter who succeeds. For example, the TA leader who complains that, man, our time to fill is going down, but nobody seems to care. You know why? Nobody cares what time to fill is. You know what they do care about? Average value of person in seat in dollars.
Yes.
Times time to fill minus older time to fill. Hey, we just saved $100,000 because our time to fill went down. Everybody gets that. Everybody understands that in a heartbeat. And so recruiting, TA, HR, employer brand all have to understand that if they want to stop being referred to as a cost center, they have to show that they understand how businesses work. And so that to me is a big challenge.
I like how you teed up earlier in the conversation just a few minutes ago that math sucks, and then you just did the math for people.
Sorry. Yeah. Look, I have an MBA. I'm not proud of it. It works. It's in there. I can't get it out. I can't excise it from my brain. So it's there, but I'm not proud of that.
So my biggest beef with this whole TA recruiting HR is not a cost center.
Yeah.
Is that like we can't redefine gap principles? Like that's not the point. We can talk about the value we present, but like you're never going to convince the CFO that in the P&L we are not a cost center.
Yeah. But you have to show that you're bringing value, because as a CFO, a good CFO looks at every cost center and says, how hard can I squeeze? And that's their job. They are evil in that regard. They want to make this as just big enough to put in the pocket and walk away with. And you're like, no, without us, we can't hire people. Without us, everything goes crazy. And the ROI question is such a complicated one, because the truth is, and I'm quoting Marcus Body here, who's a friend of mine over in England. He says, no one has ever said, what's the ROI on electricity? It's just a thing you need to get everything else done. So when they're putting you in that ROI box, what they're trying to say is, we're trying to poke you to see if you can justify your existence. And that is a challenge. You're right. It's a cost center, but that doesn't mean it's not driving massive value. So you have to be able to understand how to calculate that. And honestly, I think there's plenty of opportunities for recruiters, especially, to say, because we hired A over B, because we hired X over Y, what we did is we actually brought in brand new skill sets and abilities into the company, which enabled us to do A and B and C and D, that unless we hired those people would be incredibly expensive to onboard separately. So for example, go back to recruiting again. There are a million recruiters out there. Many of them are looking for work. Some of them really know how to use AI. Guess what? Hire one of them, and not only do you have a recruiter, you have someone with an affinity and a skill set for AI who can help you elevate other things. That is what recruiting should be doing, is helping onboard these new skills, onboard these new experiences, onboard these new ways of thinking to help the company grow. It's really hard to calculate that. It's really hard to say, okay, we hired Pete and not Bill, and therefore we saved ourselves $450. That's really hard. However, you need to be able to talk and think in those terms so that business leaders go, right. That whole line I keep saying about how people are a most important asset, that's all bullshit. Without people, there is no business. And therefore, we should bring in the best possible people to grow the business. That is just basic math.
Yeah, and I'm biased. Shout out to my recruiters out there. I'm an HR guy, lead a people and talent function. I've worked in recruiting, marketing, HR, but at heart, like I'm a hustler. I'm a recruiter. I actually have a prediction that I think we're going to see more CHROs, CPOs from the talent recruiting track.
That'd be nice.
They operate at just a different velocity and have kind of a diametric function to traditional compliance-based HR. So as we saw the movement of HR to people ops, and we peeled off benefits and payroll to finance, we're going to see recruiters at the IC level leapfrog their HRBP counterparts.
Yeah.
Sorry, HRBPs, it's just true.
Yeah, but I mean, that's old school thinking that HR is there to play defense. How do I not get us sued? How do I make sure everybody checks the box and we can't get in trouble? That's a very defensive posture. And it makes sense in 1980, but it's not 1980 anymore. Now you want a CHRO who thinks, how do I help the company grow? How do I add value? And you're right. There is a part of that is very head of TA focused. There is that bit of hustle, that bit of additive thinking. I wish it would be more strategic. I think that's still a missing piece in a lot of head of TAs and a lot of CHROs, where they don't see that bigger picture about how adding people dramatically increases the value to the company. I think that's a missing piece. But yes, this whole shift from how do we play defense to how do we think better about the company, that has been happening. And I think the addition of TA and TA thinking exacerbates that in a good way.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned posture. I think when it comes to CHRO, you can definitely see the posture shift at an organization that has an in-house general counsel complementing an in-house CHRO. That CHRO is going to get real quiet when they're no longer the authority in the space. Another piece about budgets, you talked about how we quantify that value we bring. A tactical tool and tip that I have is going back to the business leader and being like, hey, so-and-so, founder, VP of marketing, whomever, didn't you say we're going to be $1 billion company? I need a $2,500 check for this talent community partnership. We're sponsoring a hackathon.
Yeah.
Or, hey, VP of marketing, what was your programmatic spend last month alone on LinkedIn retargeting ads? And what was the conversion rate?
Yeah. And I want 3% of that. I want the teeniest possible piece of that, which is still going to double my budget.
Yeah, I'll make 10K shine in a underrepresented DEI talent community partnership strategy.
Yeah. Totally.
It just goes back to also how cheap our software and tools are. It's like
I don't know
laughable
about that.
compared to sales and marketing.
No. I think what happens is there's a difference in scale. I always joke that if you want to buy a CRM, CRMs are cheap until you call them a recruiting CRM, in which case the price goes up by 5.
There you go.
You know, it's like buying paper plates. Like, oh, paper plates are cheap. Oh, they're wedding paper plates? Oh, that's a 4x price differential. It's a whole different ballgame. However, marketing, because they're trying to speak to millions of people at once, the scale question is different. And so yeah, it looks expensive, but on a per target basis, it's different. But that's fine because marketing and recruiting are doing 2 different things, even when they're using the exact same tool set. Marketing is all about it's all about quantity. How many leads can I get? How many eyeballs can I get? How many clicks can I get? How many impressions? How many share of wallet share? Everything is a question of more. In recruiting, it's a question of better quality. How do you need the best possible person in this seat? Otherwise, why am I bothering? The problem is, recruiting and employer branding tend to take their cues from marketing because marketing has so much more power and budget. And we think, oh, they've been doing this for 100 years. They must know what they're doing. But without thinking that they have a different focal point. They have a different perspective on how to use these things. So ultimately, you know, I talk to a lot of employer branders and recruiters who goes, oh yeah, I'm trying to build a dashboard. What's a KPI I should use? Should it be clicks? I'm like, why? Why is more clicks better? Explain to me how more clicks is better, because more clicks should lead to, if you're doing it right, more applications. Is more applications better? Here, let me put it in terms you'll understand. Think of any rec that you have right now. I will 10x the number of applicants. Is that a good thing or not? No, it's not. Exactly. What you want is 2 amazing candidates, end of list. Anything beyond that is wasted energy and time. So how do you get that? Well, you don't blast everybody. And by the way, all marketers call it email blasting for a reason. So don't do it too. What you want to do is say, look, there's 100 people out there who I think are really potentially interesting candidates who can bring a lot to the table. I'm going to talk about what our company does and how we're different, and let's see who bites. And if 5 bite, that's amazing. And you're going to bring 2 of them into the interview. That's amazing. You win. Doubling the clicks, doubling the impressions. Look, I'll take it a next step further. I'm talking to all my employer branders and recruiting leaders right now.
Let's go.
Do me a favor. Go to your LinkedIn channel, your company's LinkedIn channel. There is a big, fat, juicy number of followers. And it makes you go, I can't wait to talk to all of them. I hope you have your checkbook ready because that's what it takes to talk to those people.
Yep.
We are so obsessed with these numbers because they're presented to us. They're shaped and framed in ways like, isn't this good thing? Except if you can't reach them, what's the point? Right?
Dopa hits.
It's nuts. It just feels good, but it doesn't do anything for you. Talking to the 100 people who are good, likely fits, who might be interested in what you have to say is infinitely better than talking to 1 million people who have no clue who you are, have no interest in what you have to say. And let's be fair, a percentage of them will hit apply simply because they tripped and their face landed on the keyboard and hit the button by accident. And you're going to call that a win? No, of course not. So that is really where the game needs to get played. But marketing is differently focused. So that's why the budgets are all out of whack, but also why you can steal just a tiny little piece of what they got and make magic out of it without having to break the bank.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what I like seeing about folks that have jumped over to employer branding from traditional branding and marketing because they're motivated by the people. I think the same goes for recruiters. Like you could take a great recruiter, give them some sales enablement, and they could become a great SaaS seller. But at the end of the day, it's just like, it's not fruitful enough. So I think we're seeing more of those not fruitful enough marketers jump over to our side of the house and like, the water's fine. We're having fun.
Yeah, it's a weird game, but I will point out, Ryan, because you mentioned it, I absolutely think 2025 is the year of the phrase recruiting enablement is a thing, a real thing. And I think that is the stuff we should be stealing from the sales and marketing teams to help us get better.
Yeah, shout out to Adam Gordon. Shout out to Jeremy Lyons. Folks doing really good space in the RevOps and Yep. In the enablement side of things. Because ultimately, like, you want your best sellers on the phone closing. You want your best recruiters on the phone sourcing and closing.
Yeah. And it's very rare that I've seen teams of recruiters come together and share their outreach messages. It's not nearly as common as it should be. I think recruiters are, for the most part, treated like, and honestly want to be treated like cowboys and cowgirls on the lone prairie, off on their own, doing their thing, finding their candidates. I get it, but there's so much value in sharing knowledge and testing, and there's too much, because there's no school for it, because there's no programming for it. Most recruiters will say, I got in here because I tripped into it. I fell backwards into it. Everybody knows that story, which means you learned it by sitting next to an old hand at it who taught you the basics of what to do. And you went, that must be what to do. Well, guess what? That person learned it from some other old hand who taught them how to do it in 1963. And that's where most of our skills are coming from. I'm sorry. It's time to update our skills. And the best way to update our skills is to talk amongst each other, to say what worked, what didn't work. Why do we think that didn't work? Why do we think that did work? Let's try and replicate that. Let's see what happens. Let's learn from each other, because doing it individually, you can't elevate. You can't grow nearly as fast as a team can. I think companies who've really good at investing in their own recruiting and saying, how do we talk to each other and help each other and learn from each other? They're the ones who are building the next generation of good, strong recruiting.
Yes. And the other great way to do it is go do it, then talk about it.
Also true.
I think that's a unique moment we're having right now, where you have folks like myself included kind of coming out of the woodwork, where people like yourself have been around like, who the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
Who is that person? And that's what I love about actually just getting older in general. Now I'm seeing like 25-year-olds come out into the HR tech scene, and it's like, thanks for showing up. Like, recruiting kind of got cool and we're having some fun. But I mean, you talk about the way people have been trained through legacy processes, legacy teams, legacy playbooks. Like, I remember like learning recruitment, marketing, and employer branding from agencies and managing that relationship. But I got my first job in HR because I was a millennial who knew how to use Facebook when LinkedIn launched the news feed. And like, nobody in the traditional industry that I was working in knew how to do that in the department. So like, I got a job.
I think honestly, every 10 years or so, there's new technology, primarily to help the next generation get a toehold into the business world, to say, I know something you don't know, and businesses hate that. So they go, well, then I guess I'm hiring you and stuffing you in this box. And then you got to figure out what to do. But yeah, it is. I've seen that multiple. I'm old. I'm really old. I've seen that multiple times. It's crazy.
Dude, that's the thing. That's the way I feel about TikTok. I'm not on social. Like, I just do LinkedIn. I do Strava. That's it. Like, I don't do Instagram. I never even logged into TikTok. Have you heard the phrase millennial pause? Millennial pause is basically when we millennials start talking into our selfie, but apparently we like take a break before we start talking.
Before you hit the button.
Yeah. And it's something that's actually true.
That's funny.
And like Gen Z folks, they just know how to do it intuitively. That's how I feel when I'm like climbing Cringe Mountain and trying to do these selfie shot posts. So I want to say like, shout out to you for really embracing dude talking into camera. A lot of the content you've been doing is that consistency. There's almost like a caricature of you.
That's funny.
And I'm sure you experience that when you go to conferences and people are like, oh, it's that dude. And they come up to you and they want your autograph.
Well, never. Yes, I was about to say no one's ever asked me for an autograph, and that's not true. We'll say that separately. So I really kind of cut my teeth in podcasting, and the conversation was always like, people would say, "Oh, you're my running buddy," and I'm like, "No, I'm not. No, I'm nobody's running. I'm not even my running buddy. That ain't happening." But like, no, and that's really interesting about podcasting, is that it's very intimate. It's whispering in your ear. Like it's usually you doing the dishes or driving, and it's a subconscious connection. And so I know the podcasts I listen to, I felt greater connection to those people than I did people I would read or people I would watch videos of. So I knew I got the benefit of that. I'm still navigating the change because, and now we're getting the nitty gritty of media stuff. The number one podcast channel is YouTube, which really, it's hard to understand because they violate the core rule of podcasting, which is an RSS feed, right? You get your podcasts on Spotify because I feed them via RSS. Same way for Apple and for Google and for any of your other podcast channels. YouTube doesn't do that. So how do you balance the game of how do people absorb information on YouTube? And I have to really spent a lot of time watching myself, which is really interesting. Which like, remember feeling that sense of YouTube is stupid. If I want an answer, just tell me the answer, because I can skim a piece of text and go, there's the answer. The answer's 7. Don't make me watch 5 minutes of a video to figure this out. And then I went, for a lot of questions where they're showing me an answer, there's value in the video. I get that. So 30-second, 2-minute video is perfect. And now anything I can learn in 2 minutes, it's too small. I want to learn something interesting. I want someone to show that they've done the research, they've circled it 360, they've really come at like a John Oliver kind of This Week Tonight kind of situation, where they're coming at it from all these different directions and putting pieces together that I couldn't. That's really interesting. So I'm watching my own kind of evolution of how I'm absorbing information. I presume a lot of people are following suit, because some of my best videos are hour-long videos. They're classes and deeper conversations. Remember when podcasts first came out, it used to be, oh, I really love that band. And they would talk for 4.5 minutes on a radio show. That would be all you get. Now they're sitting there for an hour talking about how do they get that guitar sound for that one thing where they do the thing. And you get super nitty gritty. I love that opportunity. Then I take it to recruiting and go, why aren't we getting that nitty gritty? Why are we still saying we're hiring? Why are we still saying great place to work? Why are we still saying great people? And thinking that's enough when our normal everyday media content diet is so much more in depth. Why aren't we mimicking that model? And not enough companies have started to kind of dive into that yet.
Yeah, I really like that example of music. You're a music fan, right? Have you listened to Dissect, the podcast? They do such a beautiful job on the Radiohead In Rainbows album.
Yeah.
And I think it's beautiful for 2 reasons. A, it explains music theory and equipment in a very palatable way for an album that, to me, is extremely nostalgic. I can tell you exactly where I was in my college dorm room when the Radiohead website went live with the countdown. And if you're not familiar with the Radiohead In Rainbows album, it was actually very transformative for how we consume music. They gave it away streaming.
Yeah.
And they were like the first to do it at a large scale. This, to me, is that granularity of the obsessive fan.
Yeah.
And somebody who wants to feel connected to a community, but also master a craft.
And I think that's something they know expanded. And by expanding it, they learn something about how this stuff gets done. Like, there's so many great podcasts. The Wonder of Stevie, which just came out about Stevie Wonder, is fantastic. There's a woman on YouTube called Ixi, I-X-I, who breaks apart Nine Inch Nails song, and I'm a huge Nine Inch Nails fan, so there you go.
Nice.
I'm going to talk about this one song and the chord progressions for an hour level. Like, it's just, how obsessive can you get?
Yes, it's amazing. You're doing that, I think, for the employer brand space. And this is a little bit of a hot take because people have jobs and we work so that we have financial prosperity. But we saw a glut of recruiting. Of course, you could probably recall that post maybe a couple years back when it said there were more recruiter postings than software engineers on LinkedIn, which is crazy. This market recalibration and deflation back to earth is a good thing for the industry, because 100%. The people who are very committed and dedicated to the craft will stick around and persevere. You've been around long enough to see like the ups and downs of the industry. But I think you're approaching employer brand from a level of granularity that we're seeing come back in the market, and we're seeing the rise of brand. I know at conferences the last couple months, employer branding and recruitment marketing was top of mind.
Yeah. Yeah. People are talking about it. I think they're starting to get it. I mean, I'm so in the weeds on it that, and literally it's aside from my wife and daughter, it's the only thing I think about. It is, there's something wrong with me. The doctors have been alerted. I am completely obsessed. But I'm seeing, I remember 12 years ago, employer brand just being an idea in US, where it's in the UK, it's a whole different model. It's a separate conversation.
We should actually dive in on that.
But continue. But yeah, so we can do that. But and watching it go from, let's just tell some stories. Like, I remember inside the big agency I worked at, where I ran their inbound marketing employer brand activation team, where it was just like, let's just make Facebook posts about what it's like to work here. Let's just write blog posts, like simple stuff. And I don't want to tell you what we charge companies for that. What is so simple, but to them was like, oh, I've never thought about doing that. And of course, everybody knows recruiters can't write. And you're like, no, of course they should, but whatever. So I remember seeing like, glad to see this toehold of, okay, let's tell some stories. And then marketing kind of came in and say, let's make them really glossy. And we're really entering this world where I hope we're exiting this world where employer brand is all about pretty pictures and platitudes. We're great, great people, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. We're delightful. Anything we can do to boost that Glassdoor score, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Rainbow colored glasses, puppy dogs and tickle fights every Thursday. Like, we are the best. And you're like, I think about every company in the known universe trying to be the best. It's like when you're in TikTok or in your Snapchat, you put on that bold fashion filter, bold glamour filter, and everybody looks gorgeous, but everybody looks the same. And that troubles me because ultimately, I'm not trying to make a company look good. Even if you hire me, my job is not to make you look good. There's something good about you already. And there's something bad about you because you are a company of human beings and we're all messy beings and don't have to get into all that stuff, but you're not perfect because no such thing exists. So my job is to say, this is what's good about you that's different. This is the downside because you can't have a strength without a weakness. I'm sorry. If you say you're incredibly innovative, it should feel a little chaotic. If you're not, are you really innovating? Right? If you say you're collaborative, it should mean you're working a little slowly because you want to be together on things. It takes longer to bring everybody to the same table and get them to agree. That's just a natural offshoot of being collaborative, right? So if you understand how you're good, you understand how you're bad, you give people a good sense of this is what we're all about, people can make their own choices. I'm not here to twist anybody's arms to say, we're the best, we're the best. I'm there to go say, look, if you're making a choice, this is why you choose us, and this is why you don't choose us. Be an adult.
I think claiming first or best is actually a pretty risky move for any brand strategy in 2024.
Yeah.
People are so skeptical. Even if you are, what percentage is still going to say, no, you're not, and try and go prove it?
And what is best? Look, Goldman Sachs, everybody knows it's really hard to work at. You're doing 100-hour work weeks. Like, it's insane. You're washing in the washroom, all that stuff. There's no shortage of people who say, give me that. I want that. What do I got to do to get that job? To them, the opportunity to learn from finance professionals, to grow their income, to grow their net worth, that is what they're driven by. So to them, that is the best job. Would they like working at OpenAI where the salaries aren't as high? Probably not. Does that mean OpenAI is not the best? No, OpenAI is absolutely the best for a certain person, for a certain motivation, for a certain mission-driven person. And the same is true for every organization, from the post office to, I don't know, a small, mom and pop bakery, to any business that exists. There is something you're doing that's different, that's good, that somebody wants. It's just a matter of kind of extracting that. It's scary to do that. Because when you're trying to do that, what you're really saying is, on a macro strategic level, there are only two strategies: be the best or be an only. When everybody is trying to be the best and everybody looks exactly the same while they're doing it, being only is scary. I mean, that's the whole subtext of Moneyball and like all this stuff where it's like, if everybody's going to zig, you got to be really good and comfortable and secure in yourself to say, we are going to zag on purpose, because the second we zag, no, fewer people will apply. That's a good thing. Oh no, we won't be listed on these. No one cares about that stuff. If you know what you want and you can be clear about it and prove it and credible about it, you'll get the people you want. But it is scary in a recruiting world where it's about more applicants, more applicants, and more applicants, because parts of us still think it's 1964.
So true. It's interesting you brought up like banking, and I heard an interesting statistic. Wells Fargo, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs combined, their revenues don't equal what JP Morgan is doing.
Yeah.
And that's like only tier one.
Yeah.
And then you have all the other banking institutions. So the amount of capital out there is just,
it's
fascinatingly crazy.
Staggering. Yeah. But, let's be fair. If you added the valuations of certain companies on the tech side 5 years ago, you would have said the exact same thing. Google, Amazon, Facebook, holy crap, right? And then now you got SpaceX and the various Elon companies doing whatever the hell they do all day long. Happy to comment on that separately.
Parent his children.
Oh man, at the very least, himself. He should parent himself. I have gone into a space where I don't want to go. There's so much money out there, and watching companies try and chase that money is so strange. It's like there's so many good people out there who can help you grow, but every company's so busy saying, what is Google doing? Or now they're saying things like,
Yes.
what is Goldman doing? And they're playing follow the leader in a way that doesn't serve them and never will. And it's so hard to get leadership to take a beat and take a breath and be truly strategic about what are we standing for? There's way more value. There's way more profit in being a tiny boutique firm specializing in one kind of investment, for example, back to banking, than it is to try and be JP Morgan, where that valuation is massive, but it's spread across 100,000 people, right? It's a huge organization. They own Chase Bank, for God's sake. Like, it is massive and it's expensive to generate that income. Whereas if you're a boutique, there's a lot of ways to generate infinitely more revenue per person. Why aren't you choosing that? Well, because my ego says get bigger. My ego says compare myself to these big companies. Like, who's in charge here, kids? Is it your ego or your brain? Because those are different people.
Who's in charge here, kids? Is it your ego or your brain? Recruiting and HR is such a monkey see, monkey do
100%.
department. And I think it comes from the lack of digital transformation and abundance of voices in the space that we saw in the rise of tech companies, particularly in the tens.
Yeah.
The reason why everybody does what Google did is because they were the cool kids. They were.
Oh, I'll take a step further. I want the head of Laszlo Block. I blame Laszlo Block in that book for making everybody go, oh, there's another way to do it and someone's documented the whole thing. Let's do all of that. And you're like, oh, okay, that's great. Are you Google? Do you make this much money? Do you have locations like this? Are you attracting people based purely on your consumer brand halo? Then maybe this is a different context. I mean, the core purpose of that book was to say, try things that are different. Yes. Study, experiment, test, play, get out there and do things differently. But everybody took it as a playbook to do step by step by step. And it's just, it's 10 years of legacy of that book alone.
Dude, we are still rummaging through the wreckage.
Yeah.
Great book, fun read, awesome stuff. Looks
Great
good on
stuff.
a shelf.
That's true.
You literally took this conversation directly where I wanted to go, and it was talking about work rules. And the challenge, I think, is that we only really had that. And even if there were 10 other great books that year about people operations, like, that was the best seller.
Yeah.
And that lived on. And I think,
and are there even any other books about talent operations? Like, I know some talent operation people, they're incredibly smart, but there's no like reference for them. There's no kind of like community for them to say, these are new ideas, we should be testing it. And that's usually where good thinking comes from. When you have a safe, secure community of people who are willing to say, that's an interesting idea, you should try that. Most people are unwilling, especially in TA Ops, which is, I think, even smaller than employer brand. God help us all. It's so insular and they all know each other, but they don't think of it as a community opportunity for them to try new things.
Well, I'll actually give that shout out to Jeremy Lyons, who's hosting a RecOps conference. I think it's like next week or something in Chicago. You should totally stop by.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to be a granular niche cohort of folks that are evolving this space.
Yeah.
And they're going to go back to their heads of TA, CHROs, and say, hey, we are a part of an emerging cohort.
Love it.
A community driving forward these initiatives. It's a philosophy, much as DevOps is. We are going to have these strategic level conversations. And it's just
and employer branders should be making friends with these people immediately. Like, they look, I know plenty of employer branders go, oh, this is a good set of ideas. But if you don't have the textual context in which to use that, a la who owns talent ops and how do you actually make that work, you're just wishing. It's hopes. It's never going to work. Good employer branding is that perfect intersection of good thinking and strategic thinking, the actual context in which you live. And how do you bring that together? A strategy helps you maximize the outcomes and the value of what you already have. But if you don't know what you have and you don't know who owns that stuff, you're just playing tiddlywinks with yourself.
Tiddlywinks. And I think what's fascinating too is the CHRO, the head of TA, they are so immersed in large scale initiatives that they may not know the cognitive operating level of some of the folks within their orgs. They may think they hired a social media specialist for TA. They may think they hired a recruiting coordinator. But if that RC or that social media specialist comes back and says like, hey, here's what I'm working on, why I'm working on it, what it means against the context of the evolution of the industry, and how I'm going to get the organization better, dude, you just created a moat for your own impact.
Exactly. And honestly, that's where employer brand helps, because it's that North Star for all those individual recruiters, RCs, talent ops to say, how do we come together and make that happen?
Yes, it's a larger talent ecosystem that is fascinating because sometimes it's one person wearing all of those hats, myself, or it's folks that are in larger organizations that get to connect and build that community within their team. And I think that's what we're going to see in highly operating talent teams in the next couple of years, is just these folks of supercharged ICs, leveraging AI, just operating at a really strategic level, delivering some insights about their candidates and teams from the data capture that happens before that first conversation.
All of it. Yeah. I think of all the companies, like if we were in a big conference doing this conversation and we said, hey, TA leaders, raise your hand if you've changed the default thank you for applying message in your ATS. How many hands would go up? At least 50%, but only 50%. It would be so many people who go, oh, didn't realize I could change that. Why would I change it? It's not going to say anything interesting.
And why can't it be a GIF?
This is the nitty gritty in which the brand lives and breathes. Right? Someone says how you do one thing is how you do all the things. So if you're going to say you're innovative and you're using default tools and you're using default messaging from those tools, are you innovative, or are you just saying you're innovative? You say you support your people and you care. Well, great. In your thanks for applying, or better yet, thanks but no thanks email, offer them some tools to help look for their next job. Like, how much do you actually care? That is the game. And these small places, and spoiler, these are all free places to do good work, to tell your story, to reflect who you are, to show people in real time what you're all about, what you care about, what you spend your time thinking about, all that good stuff, which tells the brand story. That's really where the good work is. Don't think about how can I spend $100,000 on campaign X, or how do I spend $50,000 on tool set Y. It's start with what you got. That's really where your brand starts to live.
Dude, preach. And that's the piece around the employer brand. Once you have the conversion moment and you've gone through the top of the funnel and you've engaged in the interview plan, the brand exists within the relationship of the interviewers and the communications. So there are teams out there that may not have a candidate journey. They may not have an EVP. They may not have an automation workflow for emails when the candidate goes through each stage of the interview process. And that's bookended between attraction and sourcing, conversion to hire to onboarding, and the handoff. There's so much that can be done just by engaging our hiring managers, but they're often the ones that make or break that hire. Because discerning candidates, they're not putting up with BS.
Yeah. I think so. I say, I love to describe employer branding this way, in a very nitty gritty way, because when you use the term EVP, I try to shy away from that, because the second I use it, people kind of tend to cover their wallets because they think I'm about to tell them a huge number. It's like, whatever. It's not complicated.
Just add an extra zero at the end of it.
At least. Honestly, I also joke that it's not an EVP. It's just, why someone chooses you. But if you call it that, you can't charge as much. But moving on.
You down with EVP?
The value of an employer brand is that when you post an ad, or when you post an outreach, or when you put something out into the world to someone who doesn't think about you 24/7 like your boss does, you can either say, hey, we have an opening, hey, we're hiring, or some other bullshit generic thing, or you can say something interesting about the company, which might be referred to as your employer brand. Now, if you say we're incredibly innovative, and someone clicks on that, you now know something about that person you didn't know before. And frankly, other companies don't know. And that is, this person is motivated by innovation or collaboration or support, or whatever that thing is, whatever your brand is. And then as they go through those entry stages of the journey, when they're applying, when they're learning about you, when they're Googling you, when they're going to your LinkedIn channel to see what you're saying, they're trying to see They said innovation. What does that mean? Because that's just a word. It's a pretty word, but it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So what does it mean here? What does it look like here? How does it manifest itself here? Okay, I'm getting some strong messages that it aligns with how I see innovation. I need more depth. And suddenly you're in an interview and you're asking those questions about innovation. You're hearing from the boss, from your manager, from these people doing this job now. Oh, yeah, we do it like innovation. It looks like this. It feels like this. It happens this way. So now you're at this funny stage where you know something about this candidate that no one else knows. You've now given something that they want enough to click a thing. And if you don't think that's incredibly valuable, I say start from the square one, try again. But you know something about them, what motivates them, what drives them. And here it is at the offer stage. And this is where the rubber, hello, road, how are you? Let's make this happen, right? This is where it all comes down to. If you can't make this happen, everything before this was a wasted effort. And most recruiters or hiring managers or whoever's doing your offer process say, hey, we're so glad to offer you this job. And they slide that letter virtually on paper, however they do it. And the whole conversation now becomes about that number. Because that's all you're talking about, right? And that's why I can't say, well, I was offered blah, 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 or I expected. And it's just negotiation.
Yep.
But if you say, because you know that they liked innovation, because they clicked on innovation, because they learned about innovation, because you talked about innovation. If now you say, look, we know you're really interested in innovation the same way we're interested in innovation. We hope over the last 5 weeks, you started to learn how much we care about innovation. It aligns with what you think about. And that's why we're really excited too. And you slide the paper across. Suddenly, the conversation is not just about the number, because in their head, the value of an innovative company, which I'm guessing they don't have now, because otherwise, why would they have clicked that ad? So the value of that innovation may be $20,000 a year. So if you're offering $120,000 in their head, you're really offering $140,000. Suddenly, the total value of what you're offering is way more than what they might get at a place offering more money than what you are. That's employer brand, because it understands that money is money and everybody likes it. But there's more to this world than money. And so long as they see that they're getting a fair amount of money, that is just the beginning of their choice architecture to understand, how do I decide this company or that company? And if you prove what you're about and they like what that is, they will add that value to what's on the piece of paper. And it's a completely different conversation set. You will save so much money on non-rejected offers, you won't even believe it.
Dude, I love that. One of my friends is actually like a finance leader these days. But back when he and I used to work together, he was rank and file in an audit department, climbed the ranks in the finance group, super smart dude. Mm-hmm. And he told me straight up one day, he worked there because it was worth $10,000 to him to have a big beard and wear Hawaiian shirts and running sneakers.
And are you going to put that in the job offer? No, because you don't know what the value of that is. You might say, look, this is a place where you can literally be yourself, and it might be beards and running shoes. It might be a suit and tie. It might be pink hair. Who cares? We just want your brain. Bring it. Like, that is a completely valid, especially in a place as staid and conservative as finance and auditing. Oh my God, you might as well launch a flare gun. You're just radically different. That's amazing.
And that's what's really interesting about EVP in general. I think about like EVP being a very personalized thing versus the entire organization. Like, you can't really have an EVP for 120,000 people at Google, can you?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And Google is tough because, as far as I know, Google has no employer branders and they have no EVP. They are living and dying by their consumer halo. And no one's ever challenged me on that yet. So if you know something different, please let me know. But that's what I'm basing on. Bank of America, Chase, JP Morgan, whatever, these 100,000 people. Amazon has one. Amazon has a great employer brand team. They're hiring 125,000 people a year. That is massive. What you say is, the mistake people have is, okay, it's a big company, so I have to make a really nitty-gritty employer brand or EVP. No, you make it so that you understand what the perspective of the company is. So at Amazon, and Amazon's a great example because if you know, they have I'm sure you do, Brandon, what's it called? The 17 rules of how they do work. Like, no meeting should be bigger than what 2 pizzas can feed, and they're quirky, and they have these kind of behaviors that they try to live every day. So extrapolate that. You say, look, this is a different kind of company with a different kind of mission. that is enough of an employer brand. And by the way, their employer brand is usually framed around the concept of we're pioneering.
Mhm.
And that's interesting because, well, okay, what does it mean to be a pioneer? Well, if you're in the book sales team, that's one thing because they did pioneer book sales online. At the same time, if you're in the logistics and shipping, I don't know anybody who's pioneering the space more than they are. They bought planes 10 years ago because they were shipping so much. Like they became this other kind. There's FedEx and UPS, and then there's Amazon in terms of sheer volume of logistics. Like every part of the company is pioneering their thing. Robotics, data science, recommendation engines, it's all pioneering. So you take a simple North Star, don't overgild that particular lily, and then you say, okay, to Team X, what does that idea look like to you in your word, in your world, in your parlance, in your vernacular? Share that. And so the data science team can be pioneering one way, and the logistics team can be pioneering another way. So the robotics team can be pioneering another way, but they're all pioneering and all kind of ladders in. The challenge is it's very hard it's like walking a tightrope. It's very easy to fall off one way or the other to say, okay, let's make something so broad that it's true for everybody. That's not helpful. That's not useful. You have to use it to differentiate yourself, trusting that real differentiation happens deeper into the process where that team, that function talks about what that idea means to them. It is not easy work. But that's why employer brands for companies of a massive scale cost so much money. And you might, much like yourself, I deal with much smaller companies where you say, look, we're not trying to do what they are. We have a different set of contexts. So let's invent an employer brand process that's incredibly effective, incredibly efficient, takes 3 weeks, doesn't cost much more than a LinkedIn recruiter seat, something that gives you immediate direction, tells you what to talk about, tells you what not to worry about talking about so that you can achieve your goals faster. Right? If you have 1 million books, you need a Dewey Decimal System. If you have 12 books, maybe not so much.
It's so true. Somebody actually just told me this week that the Amazon 6-pager email memo is now like a 9-pager, and it just balloons and balloons.
That's just like life in the big corporation.
I'm with you on that individualized value proposition within teams, though. Like engineering, product design is going to have their own mission, vision, and values, and then their objective and key results based on that business plan, and then you reverse 100%. Engineer the KPIs. Like that's pretty much how you just structure the strategic business plan of an org. But from a branding perspective, that's going to look different than go to market. And I think that's the key here. If you're working in employer branding, is just really know your audience, know what the value proposition is, know how your teams culturally operate. What are the norms?
What do you offer that others don't?
So true. Well, this has been wonderful, James. Thanks so much for joining. I'm sure we can
start
jam
recording
all day. I know, right? I got to say, really quick, this week I had low blood sugar and deleted a comment on your Tyson chicken post because I came in hot. And do you want to hear what I said? You might have seen it. Did you see what I wrote before I deleted? Okay, I loved your Tyson chicken post for hacking Unsplash or whatever, Shutterstock, whatever they're using for stock images. Great campaign. However, they're currently under investigation, serving a warrant for FLSA violations in the state of Arkansas, like this week, for child labor. It's like, that's really bad for brand.
That's not good. Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm envisioning the photos. There is definitely children in that photo. So yeah, this is where marketing and branding, get into trouble when they try to overstate and they don't understand the reality of the company.
Yeah. Like what is the whole ecosystem? So I deleted it because I didn't want to blow up your public prospecting, but it's so true. It's like, what is the product story? What is the growth story? What is the financial story being told through our candidate communications?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, let's put a pin in this here. How can people stay in touch with what you're doing, where you're publishing, and where you're hanging out?
Well, honestly, LinkedIn is the best way. James Ellis, LinkedIn, can't miss me. I post a lot. I talk a lot. I'm a loudmouth. I do employer branding. So if you're interested in employer branding, I'm going to give you 2 links. The first is, if you're just interested in learning more, go to employerbrand.ing, employer branding. It's a new TLD, which is really cool. All my resources there, most of them are free. So classes and courses and articles and podcasts and videos, all that stuff, including the books, they're all there. So it's one-stop shopping there. If you'd like to talk about what it means to have a brand for a smaller company, less than 2,000 employee company, go to employerbrandlabs.com. That's me. That's what I do. It's kind of how I make my living. Love to kind of explain the process, which isn't what you might expect. It's way faster. It's way cheaper than what most companies do. But it's about impact. It's about cutting to the chase and getting you something meaningful. And that's what I do. So that's employerbrandlabs.com.
Do you ever, like, if a company wanted to invite you in just for like a half-day workshop with their team to just inspire, educate, inform, like, do you do that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that happens every once in a while. It's fun. It's not an everyday situation where I get to parachute in. I'll tell you a story. I can't say who it is. There's an NDA involved. I'm sorry. I don't like lawyers any more than you do. I'm sure they're necessary. But this was a big pharmaceutical company, global pharmaceutical company, and they had an employer brand. And they're like going, we can't get anybody to use the dang thing. And they said, let's break it down piece by piece. And they called me and said, can you explain employer brand to Comp and Ben? And I went, I don't see why I should have to. They are the number one provers of your employer brand. And they went, what? I said, Comp and Ben determine how much of your employer brand is real and how much of it's just a bunch of bull. And they went, you can come in. And I spent an hour talking to Comp and Ben about the amazing work they do and how important they are, how they're being the plumbers of the particular corporate skyscraper is actually more important than the architect, because the plumbers determine how high the water can go, which means that's how high the building can be. And so they're one of those teams where they determine what the magic can be. So why aren't we treating them like artists or architects or geniuses? Because that's what they are. And that connected that's what we offer and that's what we do. Like, it was so much fun to kind of unpack that with them.
You heard it here first, folks. Cozy up to Comp and Ben and get yourself a raise. Also, 100%. Comp and Ben, not tradesmen, compensation and benefits. We'll just clarify there.
I thought we were talking to HR people who knew that stuff backwards and forwards.
Well, hopefully the audience is catching up with us. I love talking with you. Your energy is contagious. Thanks for all the work you do. And I can't wait to see you at the next one.
No, this has been a great conversation, Brandon. I appreciate the inviting me on. And I think having these conversations in open public is how we make change. And that's really what it's all about. We can't get better until we start to make change.
Thanks for your fast friendship, your kindness, and welcoming voices like mine into our space.
Thanks, Brandon. Talk to you later.